Hare Krishna. We welcome everybody for this Saturday Satsang program. So we are looking at the brief history of Vaishnavism, and last time we looked at the different sampradayas, right? And we also looked at where does our Gaudiya Vaishnava sampradaya fall, right? So does anyone recollect what are the four major Vaishnava sampradayas? Sri Sampradaya, Brahma Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, and Kumar Sampradaya. Right? Very well. Extra fees for Suresh Prabhu today.
Serious students.
So, and where does the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya fall under? Under the Brahma Sampradaya, that was founded by Madhvacharya. Right? So, we also understood that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than Krishna himself. Right? And he made a prophecy that पृथ्वी ते आछे यत नगर आदि ग्राम सर्वत्र प्रचार हैबे मोर नाम. So this reference comes from the Chaitanya Bhagavat Antya Khanda 4.1 to 6, and later on further quoted in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 17.32. And the translation, we will recite this shloka. Okay. Prithvi te ache yat nagar adi gram sarvatra prachar haibe mora naam. The translation is, in every town and village of the world, my name will be heard. Now, this prophecy was made by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu way back in the 15th century, right? And there were several stalwart acharyas who followed this parampara and took the parampara to very glorious levels, right? And in the 19th century, one of the greatest preachers of that times were His Holiness Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. Right? He was the founder of the Gaudiya Math, and he was the first one to have taken the Hare Naam Sankirtan overseas. He established two centers in Europe, okay, if I'm not wrong, one in England and one in Germany. Okay. So he was the first one to take this thing abroad. However, that the impact was fairly limited during that time. The presence in India was huge. It became very, very huge. And one of the things that was lacking in the Gaudiya Math was the lack of the succession planning. Right? During the times of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, the Math took up very, very well. However, immediately after the passing of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, the disciples, somehow they could not carry on the legacy. Though there was a lot of support, there was a lot of opulence in terms of material facilities available, plus the spread available across India, and plus a few centers overseas. The impact was fairly limited subsequently, right? even the disciples, like we saw the last time, right? That Krishna Bahirmukha Hana, Krishna Bahirmukha Hana, Krishna Bhuliya Jeev, Tare Maya Japatiya Dhari, something like that, right? So the moment we become, we turn away from Krishna, Maya is there to immediately take hold of us. And that is what precisely happened to a number of disciples. They landed up getting sort of impressed by the marble temples and the marble rooms that were built and all those things, and they got stuck into those opulences, and somehow the focus on the Krishna consciousness was lost. And Prabhupada was one of the most stalwart devotees, we would say, in terms of his ability to understand and propagate the Krishna consciousness, complemented by very systematic, hard-working and very managerially sophisticated way of propagating the Krishna consciousness all over the world. Right. So the person who actually made this prophecy true, we will look at a brief history of that person, and that is none other than Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so there are very elaborate descriptions about Srila Prabhupada's life and times in Srila Prabhupada Leelamrit, which was written by His Holiness Satswarup Goswami Maharaj. Okay. I have taken a very few excerpts out of this thing, and I am elaborating on a few events which will help us to understand more of the mood and spirit of Prabhupada rather than talking too much about the history itself. The mood in which Prabhupada took up this whole thing is very, very important to understand. So, on the 13th of August 1965, Srila Prabhupada, he boarded the steamer Jaladuta from the King George dock in Kolkata. At that time it was Calcutta. And he was very generously offered a free ticket to travel on this Jaladuta by Srimati Sumati Morarji, who was a business magnate and shipping magnate, owner of the Sindhya Steam Navigation Company, okay, and which in turn owned the Jaladuta cargo carrier. And that's where she offered free tickets to Prabhupada to travel to America on this Jaladuta carrier. Now this was a 35-day journey, and Prabhupada arrived in New York on 19th of September 1965. The journey is a fairly tiresome one. Most people, those who have had any opportunity to travel on a ship or a yacht or whatever, the wobbling of the ship causes a lot of trouble to most people, and Prabhupada at the age of 69 he went there, right? So you can imagine the kind of troubles, challenges he would have had. And on a few days his sickness and nausea was so high and his heartache was so high that it was concluded later that Srila Prabhupada had 2 heart attacks on the way to America. But in spite of that, he had a lot of determination to go over to America and spread the word. Now, the question arises, how and why Srila Prabhupada was inspired to do all this? So, which his mood and his spirit is evident from the poem that he wrote while he was on board the Jalduta, which is Markine Bhagavad Dharma. So the spirit of this poem was, he was praying to Krishna that I am a puppet in your hands and I am a beggar who is at the mercy of your at your mercy, and only you are the one who will be enabling me to take up this journey and take up this task of spreading the Krishna consciousness all over the world. Now, frankly speaking, Prabhupada, he was a true sannyasi. When he left from India, he had only 40 rupees in his pocket, a few Bhagavatam sets which he had published before, and just his sannyasi attire. With only these belongings, with the complete faith in Krishna, he had taken up this journey to spread the Krishna consciousness. Now, why America? Let's try to understand a little bit about this. I mentioned to you that His Holiness Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he had started 2 centers in Europe. However, the things had, when you look at the history, we understand that the geopolitics had completely changed after the world wars. Right? America had established its supremacy all over the world, and Prabhupada, though he was technically speaking in the spiritual realm, he was very conscious of the material aspects as well. So he was very particular that he knows he has very limited time on this earth. He was traveling at the age of 69. So he would want to do everything in an impactful way. So he knew that at that time, during when he traveled 1965, whatever Americans followed, that was being followed all over the world, including the counterculture that was existing in America at that point in time. Counterculture was a very, very devastating mode of humanity at that time, wherein people, the youngsters, they had inherited a lot of opulence from their fathers and forefathers, and practically speaking, everything received on platter. So the baby boomers who had fought on the world wars or participated in world wars and all those things, they had a lot of opulence which was being offered to the following generation without having to take any efforts. So these people, they had a lot of material resources, and it is said that when Lakshmi ji is there without Narayan, she is in the most volatile mode. Right? And the first thing it attacks is the values of the people possess. And that is how, since Narayan is not with Lakshmi ji over there, that opulence leads to the degradation of the character. And that's what was happening to all the youngsters. And since everything came to them on a platter, they did not value what is the American dream about. For the outsiders, it looked like a dream world. But for those people who were living there, especially the youngsters, they were just unable to connect to anything because all of them were aimless, right? And somehow to gratify the senses was the only objective of these people at that point in time. And how much can you gratify the senses? Like, for example, let's say if someone has the opulence, okay, can someone start eating 10 times a day? No, right? Just because you have a lot of money, you cannot start eating 10 times a day. At most, what someone would do is that, okay, I don't know why this keeps falling down. At the most, someone could do was to probably have a slightly better quality of the food and prasadam. Of course, they were not having prasadam, otherwise they wouldn't have been like that. So, and same is true about all the other senses as well. So, all the senses, including the tongue, the belly, the genitals, and all those things, they were trying to satisfy, and nothing was enthusing them. So, in the counterculture, these people, they were also exposed to LSD, marijuana, and a lot of other drugs. And these people thought that they will get high on the LSD and try to go in experiences world which is beyond the material world, without realizing that this thing is not taking them anywhere, but instead it is taking them down to hellish life. That is the point in time when Srila Prabhupada landed in New York, and he started spreading the Krishna consciousness over there. The life of Prabhupada in US was very eventful. Within 1 year of landing there in US, he formed ISKCON with the help of 7 devotees who were also his disciples, right? And we can see the names of some of these devotees who signed the incorporation documents of the ISKCON. Now, this is also a very interesting aspect, that he didn't give a name just like Krishna Consciousness Society or whatever. He named it particularly International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So right from the beginning, he had this vision of making this international, and he wanted to use US as the starting point. So this indicates the amount of statesmanship that Srila Prabhupada had, and the vision and ability to articulate what he intends to do. So we saw that in September 95, he went to US, and within 10 months, on July 13, ISKCON was incorporated. And all these devotees, Mukundas, then Brahmananda Das, Satswarup Goswami Maharaj, Hayagriva Prabhu, Shyam Sundar Prabhu, and Gargamuni Prabhu, all these devotees, they were really stalwarts who helped to take the Krishna consciousness within US to multiple places, as well as to Europe, and then bring it back also to India. Right? In July 1996, also the first temple in the US was established, which is at the 22nd Avenue, and this particular place has a lot of significance in the history of ISKCON. This was the first place where Prabhupada had formally taken the classes for the devotees. They also had some yoga classes and those kinds of things to inspire the devotees slowly. Like, you cannot all of a sudden get someone into a deep philosophy like Krishna consciousness. So initially they took the route of yoga and those kinds of things, some Indic cultural aspects, and slowly get the devotees on board onto Krishna consciousness. Now, within a few weeks of that establishing of the temple, Srila Prabhupada also did the first set of initiations in the September 1966. So within 2 months of the establishing of the temple, Srila Prabhupada had totally actually 11 devotees initiated at that time, out of which 8 were initiated on one day, and 3 of them they could not join on the that particular day. So within a few days later, all of them were also initiated. Now, the resourcefulness of Srila Prabhupada is seen over here. Srila Prabhupada, whatever resources, whichever people were available to him, he took up them and engaged them in the service of Krishna. He did not look at what is the background these people are coming from. He did not look at that these people are like from the meat-eating families, they are boozers or they are drug abusers and so on and so forth. He knew what is the potential of these people and what they can become. He visualized them and engaged. So when Srila Prabhupada went there, these people were into this counterculture, and within 1 year, 11 of them taking up to the initiation level. And the story goes that Srila Prabhupada had not even clarified to all these people what are they getting into. The 4 regulative principles like we discussed last time. What are the 4 regulative principles? No meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, and no illicit sex. So all these people who were proficient in breaking all these principles, they took up this Krishna consciousness. And the story is that Mukund Das, means Mukund Prabhu and Janaki Mataji, these two were living together at that point in time. Even at the time of the initiation, they were living together. They were not formally married. So when Srila Prabhupada clarified to them what is it that they are supposed to do, and they understood that they cannot have illicit sex, and technically since they weren't married, they cannot live together. They understood that thing, and immediately after their initiation, their marriage was arranged by Srila Prabhupada. They took up on themselves to get married in the Vedic culture properly. And the history of their marriage is also very sweet. In fact, Srila Prabhupada arranged their marriage in the matchless gifts, wherein Srila Prabhupada asked them to invite both their families for the marriage. However, the time was very, very short between the sending of the invitation and their family was in a altogether different part of US, some 3,000 miles away. So they could not, most of them could not come there. The only person who joined from their family was Judith, who was sister of Janaki Mataji, Janet at that time, for that marriage. And there were a few other devotees, so about 50 people altogether attend this marriage. Right? And Prabhupada, he was so brilliant in engaging whoever is available at that particular point in time to engage in the service of Krishna in whichever way that is needed. So during the marriage preparations, Prabhupada, he was very fond of very elaborate food preparations. He himself was a master of it, and he also sought the help of the devotees to get the food preparations done from them too. So he wanted to make kachoris for all the devotees at that point in time, and he was short of hands. So Judith, who was the sister of Janaki Mataji, who had come all the way from 3,000 miles and tired and probably very exhausted, Prabhupada gave her the task of kneading the dough for the kachoris. Now just imagine a girl who, and it is understood that Judith, who later on became Yamuna Mataji, she came from a culture wherein they did not take any dairy products, they did not eat any sweets, they did not eat any of the fried items, and this lady is being given the service to knead the dough for the kachoris. And there are very beautiful pastimes about how Prabhupada asked her to do this. So he gave her the flour and asked her to make the dough. So now she doesn't even know what dough means and what consistency and whatever. Prabhupada is giving her instructions. You knead this into a soft, nice. Give me a moment. It's very irritating me. I don't know why it is falling down all the time. Prabhupada gave her the instructions to knead it into a soft and moist dough. She did not even know what the end product is, what the objective of kneading this dough is, and anything. And Prabhupada tells her that you knead this dough. Now she was very puzzled what she should be doing and asked Prabhupada what does he expect her to do. And Prabhupada was so direct, telling her, you are such a grown-up girl and you don't know even how to knead dough. And then when she asked what should be the consistency of the dough, Prabhupada asked her to hold her own earlobes and told her that the dough consistency, that softness should be like the earlobes of yours, till the time you knead it so much so that it feels as if you are holding your earlobes. So just imagine an altogether unknown person, and he could get the work done from such people as well. And then he made kachoris for those 40-50 people single-handedly at that point in time. So Prabhupada, we can see how much he can inspire anybody. And as I mentioned, Judith, eventually within a year, she became Yamuna Mataji. You know, she sung one of the greatest songs which we play every time in every of our festivals. What is that? Govinda Adipurusham Tam Aham Bhajami. And who has given the music? George Harrison. The Beatles fame George Harrison has given the music to this. So just imagine the resourcefulness of Srila Prabhupada. He could get the things done from anybody and everybody. The next great event came in the form of the first Ratha Yatra on 9th of July 1967. Now this Ratha Yatra, the route I forgot to update here. It was in the heart of the San Francisco. The Frederick Street is where the Ratha Yatra happened. Okay, and it culminated on a beach. But just look at the picture. This is the first Ratha Yatra happening in the US. And look at the size of the Rath. They took up a Hertz truck, they rented one, an open top, and built the complete Rath on top of that open truck. And they boarded Jagannath, Baldev and Subhadra Maharani on top of that Rath. Srila Prabhupada was even more ambitious than this. He was explaining to the devotees that Jagannath ji, Baldev ji and Subhadra Maharani, they should each one of them come in a separate Rath. Okay? But looking at the logistics and all those things, they got all the three Jagannath, Baldev and Subhadra Maharani on one single Rath. So look at the pace with which the events are happening in the life of Srila Prabhupada. 65, he came to US. 66, he incorporated ISKCON. Immediately after that, he took up the first temple. Within a year from then, he had a massive Ratha Yatra there. And you can look at the pictures over there and see the people. They are typical hippies. Hardly any background. Forget Krishna consciousness. No virtues in life. No character. And these kind of people getting transformed into hordes from Srila Prabhupada. Why? Because Prabhupada was an empowered soul. He was an empowered devotee, and that is how he could do all these kinds of service. Now, a lot of times we get to see the results, but when we see the results, we forget that behind these things there was a lot of toiling. We know that Srila Prabhupada did all these things in such a short period of time. But what enabled him to do all these things? The preceding years, his struggle in India had enabled him to do all these things. One of the greatest assets that Srila Prabhupada had was all the books that he had written. The Srimad Bhagavatam, which he had written the first few volumes while he was living in Vrindavan in the early 60s. He had written only one volume of the Srimad Bhagavatam at that point in time. And he wanted that this volume should be made available to all the people across the India. Right? However, he was very, very short of funds at that point in time before he went to US. So much so that he almost begged to people to support him to publish his books. At that point in time, Srila Prabhupada was running the magazine Back to Godhead, which was just a 2-page fortnightly or a monthly magazine at that point in time. And someone, one of the acquaintances of Srila Prabhupada, he suggested to him that these newspapers or the magazines, these are like disposable papers. People look at it once in a while and read it probably once and throw it away. However, books is something that remains permanent. So, Srila Prabhupada took upon himself to write the Bhagavatam. He was living in Vrindavan in the Radha Damodar temple at that point in time, and he had access to all the literatures by the Shat Goswamis that we saw last year. Right? So he translated all those, the Srimad Bhagavatam from the, in fact some of them were even manuscripts of the 6 Goswamis available at that point in time. And he realized that hardly anybody is reading those things, and even the Gaudiya Math wasn't distributing much Gaudiya literature at that point in time. So he took upon himself to translate them to English. Now again here the statesmanship and the hard-working nature of Prabhupada is very, very evident from the activities he did. Now these days if we want to print something, what we do is we type something on the laptop, adjust the fonts, print it, and lo, behold, we have a print. During those times, one had to go to a press. They would set up the lithographic plate, print those, make that whole thing ready, use the ink. Prabhupada was so particular about how his book should look like. He selected the papers that were that he wanted to use for printing of the Bhagavatam. He gave it to the press. I'm forgetting the name of the press. He was in it. No, this was in India. Nevertheless, it will come to me sometime later. So he gave the first print, and Prabhupada got the first sample copy, and Prabhupada realized that the font size that the printer had selected was smaller than what he had asked. So he asked him to do that thing again, and this whole thing process took 2-3 days of setup. Prabhupada carrying all those rims and all those things he buy it from the paper market, take it to the printer, take the books from the printer, distribute it to people. But Prabhupada was very, very smart in all these things. While he was not shying away from doing the hard work, he was also smart enough to do the smart work. You know, he gave the books to very, very prolific people at the time in India, right? He gave one of the copies to that time President of India, Zakir Hussain. And he wrote a review for the Srimad Bhagavatam too. So just imagine giving this literature to someone who doesn't even belong to that parampara, and getting that person to read it and getting that person to write a review. And in the process, he took reviews from very, very prolific people. He distributed the Bhagavatam sets free of charge to some of the governments, departments, who made those things available in the major libraries all across India. So that is how the spread of this Krishna consciousness had started in India itself. And they say that there is a type of a bamboo which when you sow it and you water it for 5 years, not even an offshoot comes out of the ground. Not even offshoot. You cannot even make out that there is a bamboo tree planted over there. But after 5 years, within a few months, the bamboo grows some 10-15 feet tall. Within few months. So what is happening is that this bamboo, it grows several feet down in the earth and makes itself strong enough to bear the weight of the bamboo, which is going to stick out several tens of feet above the ground. And similar was the principle followed by Srila Prabhupada as well. He knew that for preaching across the world, he's going to need English books. So he first wrote that Srimad Bhagavatam in English, took it to America, and those were the books which enabled him to garner the support from everybody. There are a lot of other fantastic things Prabhupada did. Amongst other things is taking support from the wealthy people, politically well-connected people, to people who could make an impact, right? And he engaged them in the service of Krishna. And in fact, the single of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, that Hallelujah, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. This was sung none other than Beatles, which was the topmost selling band at that point in time, and all of a sudden the Krishna consciousness movement, it became global. So we have to seek inspiration from Prabhupada in our Krishna consciousness efforts as well, that we have to remember the 3 major pillars of the Krishna consciousness. First thing is, of course, the spiritual foundation. It is a must. That spiritual substance has to be strong. Apart from that, we need to ensure that and understand that though this world belongs to Krishna, this is governed by Durga Devi. And the Durga Devis, in the kingdom of Durga Devi, there is only one resource which works very strongly. What is that?
Maya.
Lakshmi Devi. Without Lakshmi Devi in the service, under the kingdom of Durga Devi, not much can be done, even in the name of Krishna. Right? So the financial principles also have to be strong. Apart from that, we need to ensure that we do the things in the most impactful way. In fact, a lot of people at that point in time, they were sort of complaining that the Hare Krishna movement is targeting the elites, the rich and the famous and all those things. But Prabhupada, he was impartial to all those things. But at the same time, he understood the impact all these people could have on the Krishna consciousness movement, and he engaged all of them in the Krishna consciousness, and that is how we are now sitting here because of Prabhupada's mercy, discussing all these things here today, because he made this knowledge available to us in such a simple, lucid language that anybody and everybody can connect to. So we'll stop over here. Yes, Prabhuji.
You said that Bhakti Siddhanta Swami Thakur
I'll speak loud. He brought Hare Krishna movement to
Europe.
Europe and Germany, right?
Yeah.
So he himself went there, or?
No. Some of his disciples went there, but it not. I mean, they established some basic stuff, but it did not grow significantly at that point in time.
And what happened now? It is still there, or?
Frankly speaking, I haven't come across what happened after that. But however, a lot of God brothers of Srila Prabhupada were very, very good stalwarts. One advantage I would say Srila Prabhupada had was he had the experience of running a business. Right? So he was a pharmacist by education and a chemist by an education and pharmacist by application and profession. So he knew how to run business, how to handle the finances and all those things, and he engaged all those skills in the service of Krishna. And in fact, one of the aspects I did not have enough time to bring about in this thing is that in early 70s, he had formed GBC, the governing body council of for the Krishna consciousness, which was the central governing body for propagating Krishna consciousness. So he was a great visionary, and understanding the purpose, that the purpose is Krishna consciousness, but being fully aware all the time that this is a material world and you need material resources even for spreading of the Krishna consciousness, and he handled those things very, very well. Yeah. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he established the Gaudiya Math.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes, Mother.
Prabhuji, how in the initial days, how Prabhupada managed Prasadam Seva?
Mataji, he was such a resource. When I am reading the Lilamrut right now again, I observed that his enthusiasm for Prasadam was amazing. I mean, when he was doing all the things alone himself as well, he had very elaborate preparations. And whatever I have come across globally, I mentioned I have visited some 25 countries, and in most of the places I came across the devotees, temples and all those things. And in most of the places, the prasadam used to be fairly elaborate. So much so that Steve Jobs, in that famous address to the university, he mentions that once in a week he would walk 10 miles to a Hare Krishna temple to have a full belly food. So prasadam has been very elaborate in Srila Prabhupada's preparations. He himself at the age of like 70 cooking for like 30-40 devotees single-handedly. Right? But at the same time, Prabhupada was very pragmatic. That khichdi was also very popular at that point in time. Those places which were short of hands, this khichdi was also very popular. And at the same time, wherever the facilities and hands were available, he also made it elaborate. Yeah. Yeah, kachori was his favorite, and he used to call the gulab jamuns the Krishna consciousness bullets or bombs.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, one more question is, how Prabhupada insisted on satsang over deity worship? How he initiated that practice into this, in addition to the Harinam Sankirtan movement?
So, Mataji, he was, even before going to the US, he understood the importance of satsang. So satsangs, they have been an eternal thing in our traditions. So he established the standards of everything, right from DT worship to the programs and the spread of the Krishna consciousness. So the only way to share the knowledge is through satsang. Right? There's no other way. I mean, books, there is certain books help to reach, but the transformation happens only through satsang. Through the books, you may get the knowledge. Through the books, your understanding will improve. But the transformation happens only when we take the devotee association, and that is possible only through satsang. And that is why Prabhupada, he had, right since the beginning, even at the Matchless Gifts, he used to have regular lectures and satsang, kirtan and everything.
But inspiring to read the books is through satsang.
Yeah.
If you hear something, then you will try to
True.
find it through the book.
So you give the taste of something to, like when we walk into a mithai shop, a sweet meat shop, you'll observe that, especially the old style ones, the first thing they do is put a few samples on your hands, even before asking. You just walk into this experience. I happened to have it very recently. I went to my maternal grandpa's place, and there we walked into a mithai shop, and that person, of course, he knows the family, but not just because of knowing the family, even before anything, he had put at least 10-20 samples of different mithais and bakery items and all those things on my hand. So the same principle, if we give a taste to someone about what to do, same thing happened to us, right? We heard about this thing from our family, our friends and all those things, and now the desire, that thirst, that hunger for this knowledge is so much that we keep on reading and reading and reading, and time is short.
Prabhu, Rath Yatra was started by Jayananda Prabhu.
Yes, Jayananda Prabhu, he was very instrumental in that, and that is why Prabhupada insisted that whenever formal ISKCON Rath Yatra happens, there has to be a photograph of Jayananda Prabhu on the top of the Rath. That was Prabhupada's way of expressing gratitude towards his devotees.
What happened to all these devotees? Some of them we still remember the names.
So what I recollect is Mukund Prabhu and Janki Mataji, if I'm not wrong, they went to London. I'm not getting the names, but one of the couples, they went to London. They helped to connect the Beatles to Prabhupada, and they helped to build that Bhaktivedanta manor. So very beautiful estate. One should go and see it one of the times. Yes, we will also go. I think we'll stop here today. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Anandkumar